Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm glad to be joined by Adam Helfgott, CEO and founder at MadNetwork. Adam, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited for our chat.
Well, me too. And so, for those viewers who might not be familiar with kind of who you are, you want to give a little background, kind of who you are and how you got into blockchain?
Yeah, sure. I'm a kind of serial entrepreneur, built and sold a bunch of companies in the regular internet land. First company was put summer camps online, back in 1999, and then had a fashion startup in 2006. But in right around when Bitcoin came out, I saw early Reddit posts and whatnot, and was fascinated by it. I read all the posts, did all the stuff, and I was running a business at the time and didn't quite have the energy to really, put up a miner, unfortunately, back in the early days. But, kind of kept tabs on the project that was Bitcoin back in the day, and slowly got more and more into it, invested, sold. But started getting really into technology and seeing what the technology can do. And it was right around the time of the Ethereum ICO, where I started, doing some consulting work for other blockchain projects that were in the commercial land, trying to, do proof of concepts for, big credit card companies and things like that. Helping, I'm a product guy. I build technology, but I really, know how to make products for the enterprise. And so helping, various early projects and companies kind of apply what I know into what they know and make things. So that's really my start in crypto, and just, I have a firm belief that, blockchains are as important as an invention as the transistor was. And the same way, it's going to take a long time for that to kind of integrate and change society. But the cooler and more fun stuff that exists, the faster that'll happen. So here I am.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I speak to a lot of people in these conferences, and it seems that this is a pretty common background. People who are serial entrepreneurs who were involved in the kind of the early adoption of the internet days, building things on the internet. And it seems like a lot of those people are now also now building on blockchain. And there's been endless parallels drawn between the two in terms of, we're both in the early days and adoption and the protocol layers and this and that. Do you find, you mentioned though, you compared it to transistors. And that's more of transistors is obviously a hardware, but that spawned obviously the computer age. And it's interesting you go back that far. I mean, most people I find compare it to the internet. Why do you feel and why do you view it as a transistor and as the comparison for that more so than kind of this connective technology of the internet?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the way I look at it is that the transistor was the beginning of, allowing automation, with basically be to start replacing humans with technology. Old computers were rooms of people that had different, and there was a person that, said hey, here's the problem we're trying to solve, and would break it down and give it to this department solves this equation, this department solves that, and then the output would come out and someone would consolidate, and that was a computer. It was a bunch of people. And in the same way, what we can do with blockchains, which is automate trust and transactions and whole slew of other types of automation, it's a foundational piece in basically allowing humans to do more. That's how I view it in that way there. So TCP/IP is a layer on top of what transit is software. Blockchain are software, but it's cryptography itself is math, and it's kind of it's hardware in a lot of ways.
You mentioned very early on in this conversation that you're the product guy, and I think that's a very product answer, very product focused answer, and I think it's very fitting and a unique perspective on this industry and on this technology, because I'm mostly talking to the dreamers, but it's nice talking to the doer. Definitely get that. Now, you're the founder of the MadNetwork, but you're wearing a Mad Hive sweater. You want to break down a little bit what is the MadNetwork?
Yeah, so MadNetwork is, it's kind of like the is like the way I envision products and companies and things like that is like if I'm going to be successful at something, I need to kind of like hold on to it and kind of pull myself into it and the team into it, right? And so Mad Network is an envisioning of how do organizations interact with each other in a high speed trusted way. So the way my co-founder Tom and I look at it is that the advertising industry kind of paid for the internet to be built. Google and Facebook and all that kind of stuff paid for that. Like what we have now on the internet was largely the infrastructure was built out because it was commercially viable to do that. Once the government's, they only can go so far. And we kind of see it the same way for blockchain, right? So the advertising industry is kind of decentralized in the business version, right? Like you're a media channel, there's tons of other media channels. We're not all owned yet by one company. But we all have to interact with each other in pseudo trusted ways, or else it all falls apart, right? And so we come up with all these standards and ways, and in television we sign affidavits and we go to courts and we like attest things. And so if all that can be done with cryptography, we save a lot of time, save a lot of money. Smaller media channels can make more money, less money goes to the intermediaries. All the blockchain promises that we've seen over the past bunch of years is cut out the intermediaries and blah, blah, blah. We need application, we need an actual place where that would actually happen. So MadHive is a commercial entity that, builds enterprise software for advertising. Mad Network is the underpinnings of a new way to do that business. And the goal is to kind of like over time kind of bridge those together, and not just build something and hope people adopt it, but actually build product enterprises need that happens to use blockchains.
Yeah, and this problem, or this problem that you're providing a solution to, isn't at the forefront of most people's minds. The average consumer of media isn't noticing this issue. This is more, if you have a media company, this is something that's happening behind the scenes, behind the screen even. So you want to like kind of break it down for our viewers, people who've never even thought of this issue, because you're providing a novel solution to it. So you want to break down a little bit. What was the old way of doing business here in the ad network, and how is different now because of blockchain?
Not different yet. It's starting to be. There's an immense amount of momentum, about close to like $300 to $400 billion of momentum every year that powers it the existing way, right? And so the existing way is basically people trusting each other. And we all hear, especially in the United States, with our president that's very concerned with ratings, what a rating is, right? And what a rating is how much viewership a media channel gets, right? And so and this is just one application, but something I think that the person that's not totally indoctrinated in the media space would kind of understand is that who makes the ratings. And so in the United States and abroad, there's a company called Nielsen that probably a lot of people have heard of, that creates these ratings that say how many people are watching. And the way that they do that is that they have a panel of 50,000 people or so around the United States that are Nielsen homes, and all that data goes to Nielsen. They crunch it and they say this show on this station had this much viewership. And what that really means is that now they know what to charge for that advertising. That's why like the Super Bowl is like so expensive, because you got like 85% of America watching the Super Bowl, and probably globally as well. And so, but now and that was a model built in the 1950s that worked really, really well when there's like 6 media channels, like, or less, 4 really. It's like CBS, blah, blah, blah. Now that we have like thousands and thousands, if there isn't, it's just very simple. If there isn't a way to price your media properly, you need to like hand over your keys to like the kingdom to a company that would, like one of the major social networks or one of the major search engines, companies like that can like do that for you. And they'll happily do that for you and take 30 to 70% of your revenue as well, in order to like get the market, right? And it's simply because you can't authenticate the viewership yourself. So this is just one application there. And people trust that major institution, and they're not going to trust some small network. So you kind of have to go through them as intermediary. With math cryptography behind the scenes that can kind of count those things in an authenticated manner, you can now represent right to the brand, like a major soft drink, or those like Procter & Gamble, companies like that. They just need to trust the data. They don't need to work with those big search engines. They just need to trust that they're not throwing their money away on scammers, that are saying. So, with the right networks and math and cryptography behind it that they can trust, they can pretty much go direct to consumer, which is a pattern that we've seen happen in e-com, like people buy Apple products directly from Apple now, and people, are buying more and more things direct to consumer. So this is kind of like a B2B direct to consumer in a way, without intermediaries. There is a future where where part of that ad dollar would go directly to the user themselves for their data. There's been a lot of hoopla about that over the years. There's a misnomers there where how much is that data really worth? And it's worth a lot in aggregate, but when you parse it all out, there's the average users are worth a couple dollars a year. But there's a lot of ideas and ways of thinking about it where that distribution can be done more equally, which again requires the trust of the network and the authentication of the entities there in order to prove the value. So.
Well, yeah, if we're talking about user data, let's put that to the side for a second, because I do want to hit on that. And that is a very interesting topic, especially when it comes to the role that blockchain could play in empowering people to monetize or control their data. But talking still about the ad networks and the way the ad market could totally be changed here, isn't this problem you described kind of an analog problem that only really affects TV? Because the beauty of digital marketing, and that's really given the rise, Facebook and Google, is that they do have precise numbers. They do know a click, a view, an action, be able to measure it all. It's only really TV where they kind of have this problem where, you still have to rely on Nielsen and trust. Especially now as people pull the plug and move over to streaming services. I mean, these streaming services also, I'm sure, have the data, the exact data of who's watching. I guess you don't know, how many eyeballs are sitting on the couch, but they have good data as to who's watching, what they're watching, how long they're watching. So is this problem only really facing traditional over-the-air TV?
Yes and no. So yes, while we actually don't play at all in the linear TV space, which is the broadcast TV space. A lot of our clients are broadcast companies that are moving to streaming. The problem still exists. So actually just yesterday, if you just Google Facebook and measurement, you'll see that Facebook has realized that they have errors in their measurement services that benefit them,
Surprise.
And that's over and over and over again. That's happened, right? So there's no independent authority or body governing that, and that's where the idea of governance comes in and things like that. There is an organization called the IAB. That they choose not to really they choose to participate where it benefits them in, but they're a major, they don't need to participate if they don't want to, because they can just say what they have, and is it true that a user watching a video for less than a second generates a purchase behavior, or maybe it was the television ad that generated the purchase behavior and that person happened to be just scrolling on Facebook, and so how do you track that attribution, and how do things happen? How does a brand get good data to know where they should place their marketing dollars? And so, we aim to create as a clean data set for that to happen that isn't compromised by someone's need to have a quarterly stock price rise.
And you guys are already teamed up or partnered with a major company. I think you guys announced with Horizen that they're working with you guys to authenticate similar things on their network.
Yeah, correct. So just like all new tech, the hardest thing is to get the person that goes first, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to follow on second if it works, right? So we're really proud of the work that we've done and on the commercial side, and then be the credibility to kind of say, hey, yeah, we're the ones to do this kind of thing. So yeah, Verizon's first application is using our authentication data service, that's MadNetwork, for the application of authenticating their own news, so they can have this initiative called full transparency. So they're like the first company to basically stand behind what they say, and be able to basically they can't change that down the road without telling everyone they are, because it's basically on this blockchain network.
How is this technology helping to authenticate or kind of filter out what's the fake news and what's the real news here?
Yeah. So the idea is similar to the way like SSL works, in e-commerce, right? So that when that little key shows up in your browser, and and you can click on it, you can kind of see that this was like signed by Amazon and signed by like VeriSign or some sort of whoever their certificate authority is. So in this case here, there's an organization called AdLedger, which is a nonprofit foundation that was spun up by IBM, a company called Tegna, which is one of the broadcast TV companies, MadHive, and now it has 30, 40 major corporations and a whole bunch of other members on. That organization is kind of the VeriSign of this new world, right? So that company is basically creating the keys for Verizon, so that there's like a secondary party that's authenticating that this is Verizon. They're not self-publishing their keys, so they can't change their keys 6 months later when they realize that they want to change their messaging and things like that. And so that's kind of how we hold the companies accountable in that way, or how the public can hold them accountable, is that they're not self-signing or attesting who they say they are, which is how it is today.
Yeah, and I think that idea is really important. This idea of holding corporations, companies, individuals, but holding people as a general accountable is I think that importance is growing bigger and bigger. I think the public perception of these big tech companies have really changed over the past couple of years. If you look back, 5 years ago, to ask people about Facebook, it was probably viewed very, very positively, and that's really changed. Over the past couple of years. Google, all these companies, as people are starting to realize the amount of data they have and the amount of control they have over not only what we see, but the ripple effects of how that affects our actions down the line. And so I do think that these technologies, any technology that's adding more accountability on their part, is good in my eyes, and everyone could be their own judge there. But this idea seems pretty similar. I know there's a BAT token, a basic attention token. Has been around for a little while, that also serves this purpose of validating. We live in an attention economy, and validating the fact that you saw an ad, but that was more consumer. That was more on the consumer side. That was more rewarding the consumer for watching the ad. Do you guys view yourselves as a competitor to them, or something totally different because you're focusing more on the enterprise side?
Yeah, good question. In the ad space, and probably other organizations as well, that has a lot of like independent parties, all kind of that are forced to work together, that also might be somewhat competitive. There's a term called coopetition, and so there's a lot of places where we need to work together. But as you said, that BAT is especially focused on one. They have a great browser that I personally use. Called Brave. And that their model of advertising, in the sense that they don't pay you directly for viewing the ad, although that's kind of what it's more that when ads there's an ad format. They created their own format, a Brave ad, and when you view that in a Brave browser, I think you get paid part of the ad dollar in that sense. They're in the form of BAT tokens. That is an application that could be built on MAD at some point. Similar to, which we'll probably talk about a little bit, like there's this like the Poet application that we're adopting onto our blockchain and things like that, is that, we feel like the math behind what we built on our mainnet, supports to be able to do a lot of this stuff in a decentralized manner. Although it's more and more decentralized with each release, very, very quickly, but most importantly, very, very cheaply, so it can be done at scale. And
yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up Poet. Let's dive right into that. You guys absorbed Poet, which is a decentralized protocol for content ownership, essentially. You want to go into what they are and why you guys did absorb them, and what it adds to the MadNetwork.
Yeah. So kind of to go back to the origin story of how I got into crypto and other people. The founding team at Poet, which is and a bunch of them are affiliated with BTC Media, Bitcoin Magazine, places like that. That we've known each other for a long time and have seen that these verticalization of different applications into protocols is probably going to be a thing. 5 years ago or so. And so the idea of Poet is a great one, which is similar to what the Horizen project is, but different in the context of I want to authenticate and own my content that I create, so that if other organizations want to use it, there's like attribution back, and I can be paid to basically distribute in like a in a marketplace of sorts, kind of like the way like Shutterstock might work and things like that. Mm-hmm. That information can be sold, distributed for free, whatever it is. The idea is wonderful and the applications are good, but it's very hard to do the cryptography behind it, authentication at scale cheaply. And so over time, the applications of Poet, the Poet team is they're large token holders in our project, and they're partners of ours. And so we basically felt it would be better to absorb that product use case, and kind of 1 + 1 is 2 kind of, or 3 kind of thing in this case. So
yeah, beneficial for everyone there. And that's an interesting idea, because for the most part, when we're talking about blockchain, up until now, the main use cases have mostly been financial speculation, and other things of that nature. And it's interesting to speak about content and the ownership of content and being rewarded for content. Historically, if we're going back before the internet, distribution was so powerful, distribution channels, because the main way of getting, if you had a TV show, essentially the only place to show it was on, the networks, the major networks, and then cable opened it up slightly more. And then with the introduction of the internet, that really expanded. Now we see it with the influx of streaming programs and streaming services has really expanded. The distribution options. Shows that historically wouldn't have been made or couldn't have been made now have homes, and especially even free like YouTube. I mean, there are people make full careers, content creators make real careers on platforms like YouTube. So do you think that this technology, especially with Poet and MadNetwork, this idea of instead of having to go to one platform, instead of having to go to YouTube and having YouTube splitting the profits with them, or any of these streaming services, can you see a future where the distribution is to the entire market at once, where I'm putting my content on the MadNetwork, and essentially it's platform agnostic. It's whoever wants to use it, whatever platform wants to air it, whoever wants to see it, that's rewarding me. Do you think that could be the next leap in opening up content distribution?
Yes, although I think it'll be more nuanced than that, right? So, the sci-fi future that I see, and actually, Jack Dorsey talked about it a little bit at I think at the when he spoke at, I guess, in the Senate or Congress not that long ago, is that Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is, right now they have their own custom algorithms that that are, and we don't really know exactly what those algorithms are designed to do, like, like they might be designed to have my thumb go a little bit more, and they just practice at showing you videos that do that, like in the name of like TikTok, things like that, or who knows what they really are designed for. Having those algorithms be open sourced to a degree, or standardized, and then where the content acquisition can come from a network that is, authenticated by, an open body of standards. Let's say there was a, so one of the features of MadNetwork is that we have this basically ability to have multi-signatures on a piece of content there, or a piece, or basically something that's stored on the MadNetwork. And what that could allow to happen is that, a fact-checking body co-signs a piece of content that they authenticated, and and down the road, and there might be like the MPAA, that does movies and things like that, also co-signs it. And now these open sourced algorithms have a lot of demand from the viewers, and now these big distribution platforms kind of get forced to adopt these open algorithms in their platform. So I'm still tuning in to YouTube, but YouTube is accessing the open blockchain powered internet to get that content, and then it becomes more of a race of who can do that best. Kind of opens up the ideas a little more.
Yeah, I mean, this topic has really exploded to the forefront of people's minds and conscious because of releases of documentaries like the Social Dilemma, I believe it was called, on Netflix. This idea that these algorithms that make these platforms so popular and keep you on them, might, I don't want to say nefarious. I don't think they have nefarious gains, but their goals are different than yours. Your goals is to watch content that entertains you and maybe betters you, passes the time positively, whereas their algorithms are more geared towards just keeping you there on the platform and helping to monetize you as best as they can. So I do think this topic is really at the forefront of the public's mind, and people are looking for alternatives. But I've listened to a couple of conversations on the topic, and the big issue is that it's hard to compete against that. Like if you have an algorithm, an open source algorithm, whose goal is for the betterment, is to give people what they want to see, but not necessarily geared to keeping them there. It's very tough for that to compete against decentralized algorithms like YouTube, like TikTok, that are geared to keeping you on that platform. Obviously that one's going to do better, or it's tough to beat that when your goal is who's going to be utilizing that algorithm.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and that's where it kind of gets back into the nuance of like Nielsen and stuff like that, right? Because I will guarantee you that a major soft drink company would prefer to not have their advertisement on a piece next to a piece of social media that leads that person consuming it towards suicide. Right. And so what will happen, and I think this is an inevitability, that we're in this like early age of this new consumption tax. It's already changing. Like kids that are growing up today are probably a little better off than the ones, like the Gen X, the Gen millennials, Gen Z kind of side that kind of were in the early days. Now, because there is a little more oversight and protection, but basically is a measurement service that will kind of score the ad placement, and those even though it'll get my thumb to do this a little bit more, or I'm not going to the algorithms right now, they're incentivized my thumb to move a little bit more to get one more ad space, right? That now, if they had a net measurement there that basically gave like an emotional score that like, and that had to be tracked, that like where is this a positive experience for the user or a negative experience, and that code determined that was open sourced and auditable, and now that measurement service is a third party body that's whole sole purpose is to give brands what they really want, which is I want to associate my brand with positive feelings and emotions, and I don't want to I don't want to be part of the problem, and so if demonetization happened on platforms, it'll be a quick minute when those algos are changed, because that's the whole point of them, is to generate revenue.
Well, yeah, but here, who is that third party, and isn't that third party then inevitably just, again, that centralized weak point, that could get greedy, that is, pressures, that it has incentives, not necessarily in line with the consumer?
Yes and no. So there are a lot of like, I mean, that could be something the ACLU is part of, and, groups like that. And also from that's a place of good government regulation, right? Is that, hey, let's not incentivize our population to kill themselves for profit, It's like, so, like that. I mean, that in that movie, The Social Dilemma, like, the fact that like, suicide rates are up, for certain demographics is like, directly correlative to, social networks rise.
Young teenage girls. I think it was like 8 to 12-year-old girls. It's like tripled the amount or something crazy.
Yeah, it's frightening. And I have a daughter, and like I wouldn't, like I can't imagine, like that, like giving her a phone at 8 years old could like, lead her down that path, and so having governing bodies around this thing, it's more about the transparency of the algorithms, letting them be, audited and understood, and that data is given from the platforms and things like that to go towards a better world. And I would hope to think that these major corporations, for the longevity of their company, would join these initiatives, and that's the hope, So.
Right. Well, you hope, but at the end of the day, if they have billions of dollars and some of them trillions on the line for this, like you said, money talks. We have to make it that there's an economic incentive to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing, and I think that's what you're trying to do here with the MadNetwork, which is a very admirable task. Now, we started off. You mentioned at the beginning of this that it really is a challenge of adoption. When you're talking about any new technology, you have to get that first person or that first big person that everyone follows. When we're talking about crypto and Bitcoin, it was MicroStrategy. It was the first publicly traded company, and then Square followed, and PayPal, and we see the cascading effects over there. So we're talking about here, your product is mostly a business enterprise, in business-facing product. So when you're actually going to these companies, these traditional media companies, these traditional ad companies, is it a hard sell? Do you have to start from ground zero, saying, from square one, saying this is what blockchain is, this is how it could help you, or do they just care bottom line money? Do you just have to say, this is how much you'll be making now, this is how much you're making then?
It's kind of all the above plus one other thing, right? So if we can, and it goes back to the product stuff, right? So the thing I've learned in working with companies is if you can communicate a value proposition, the technology that powers that value proposition just has to work. They don't really care what it is, right? And so if I can, with SOC compliance and with all the government regulations that do exist, be able to like provably say that something is something, like and like have it be real and not just vaporware. What I'm selling to these companies is accountability, trustability, the ability also, like on MadNetwork, it isn't forever. In the context there is that like basically like one MAD token is 1 byte of storage for 90 days, right? And so that allows them to be compliant with their with government agencies and things like that, because they do have to garbage collect and things like that. As long as it has all the features for them to be able to do that, and then be able to like do a marketing, to say it's the values of this company are transparency and things around all of that. Here's a technology that lets them to actually prove that they actually, it's more than just words. So that's what is being sold. And then and they like the idea of blockchain because it's like fresh and new and it gets a headline. But what they're really trying to do is that thing. They don't really care, like, just like, do you know, like, we're using Zoom right now. Like, are they using a SQL database, a key value store? Like, I don't know. But I do know that the communications are encrypted and that we can see each other really well. And, but I'm sure there's some enterprise software company that sold them a ton of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you did mention there, for the companies, they don't really care how it works. For us though, and our viewers, we kind of do care. And so you mentioned the MAD token. You want to go in? What is the role or the utility of the MAD token in the network?
Yep. At its core, we have a set of basically validators and nodes that basically it's let's step back for a second. There's a project that Google created called Trillium. That's an authenticated database, a key value store of sorts. And basically MadNetwork is an implementation of Trillium with a bunch of other things, with a bunch of crypto features on it that allow us to be a decentralized authority of services, in a sense where like anyone can create a public-private key infrastructure, kind of like that VeriSign SSL thing, but for blockchain networks. And it's a layer 2 on Ethereum. So we use Ethereum for security itself, but there's this mainnet aside that basically reports into Ethereum for its security. And at its heart is basically, can we prove that something is something back to those initial certificates that are given out, right? And so in the case here, Ad Ledger is acting as that certificate authority, runs nodes and things like that. But really, any organization can take that model and do that. And so for other verticals and things like that. I think the business and enterprise adoption is the precursor to consumer adoption, kind of like, because again, just as we just talked about, people have tried to build layers or even build browsers, as we talked about, to kind of like layer in crypto stuff. But these like major corporations kind of like own the keys to the kingdom, per se. And like at scale, it's not going to happen until crypto networks are baked into the infrastructure. So that's the approach.
And there, the MAD token the MAD token is what's paying the node operators to actually run those nodes.
Right. So basically, at its core, basically it's a little the way it works is that MAD tokens, is a limited supply of them. They get staked and they spit out another token called a MAD Byte, right? And while tokens are staked, they spit out a MAD Byte. Those MAD Bytes go into kind of like at the moment is a centralized marketplace that's all audible and things like that. And then software that needs MAD Bytes in order to prove all these things, basically kind of just in time purchases these MAD Bytes under contract, and that allows us to basically build SaaS, software as a service software that's powered by crypto networks, but not really, but where the actual companies don't really need to today get involved in crypto. They can just use the utility of it and then let an intermediary company at today kind of take that risk until that is more adopted, where corporations feel it's okay to have crypto on their balance sheets. And as you said, that's beginning to happen, but it's like 4 companies, Yeah,
right. It's publicly. I'm sure privately there are more companies, but either way, their numbers are low and they're going to be conservative until they're sure, and assure their stakeholders.
So we're that's it. So we want to get it over the line. That's it.
Right. I mean, and I think that's the way to go about it. I mean, you could be a dreamer all you want, and you could, sing the praises of blockchain to the end of the world until you show companies this is the better, cheaper, more efficient, easier, yada, yada, yada way of doing business. They don't care about your ideology. So I do think that is the way to go about it.
That was the 2018 like proof of concept rush that we saw. These companies, they wanted the headline. We did blockchain, but then it like goes in the garbage. Yeah,
exactly. Instead of just don't just slap it on as a keyword, to boost your headlines and your stock. Now you mentioned that someone trades the MAD token essentially turns into the MAD Byte. Is that the dual token system that you guys are working on, or is this going to be something different in the future?
So we built out the actual software first, and now basically the idea is, can we decouple like the kind of the crypto network, hey, people that aren't building apps that want to kind of like bet on apps being built side of it, they don't really infect each other too much. Right. But there's like like 2 circles that kind of talk to each other. And so, and like what's now known as like yield farming or DeFi and things like that, is that I stake MAD tokens into a smart contract, and then basically based upon that moment in time and network utilization, a whole bunch of other stuff, that will basically start spitting out these MAD bytes that become usable by your own applications or usable by other people's applications, which need to be purchased with more MAD tokens, the master token. And then basically whoever MAD bytes those were gets those MAD tokens as, payment of sorts.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of that now, especially with the launch of DeFi, but in parallel with the launch of DeFi, we're seeing a lot of those companies that did raise in 2017, 2018 ICO boom, the ones that weren't scams, are finally coming to market. We're talking about Filecoin, and a bunch of others that I feel like we're slowly shifting from this, blockchain has a lot of potential and there's a lot of things you could do with it. Slowly seeing things being put into action, seeing use cases actually hitting the real world, including the MAD network, which is very exciting. And this is happening simultaneously with the growth of DeFi and also with this nice bull run we're getting with Bitcoin. So is this like the trifecta? Is this like the culmination? Is this like is this the tipping point for blockchain and crypto now, this convergence of great price in the markets right now with Bitcoin and altcoins, as well as the explosion of this new field called DeFi, mixed in with us finally seeing a bunch of great teams putting products to market?
For sure. So it is a watershed moment right now. I think we'll all look back at this moment with this like interest in DeFi applications and things like that. So I look at it like a layer cake, right? So we had the invention of blockchain and Bitcoin, and then we had like another layer of other applications, the early use cases of Ethereum, at the end of the day, were basically to raise money for these projects. And now Ethereum is being used as a global security layer for trust, like we're using it, and a ton of other public and private projects. And the next layer now is business and consumer applications to kind of like replace or be upgrades to our existing infrastructure that we all use every day, banking and all this kind of stuff. Here, the fact that I can like move in and out of like DeFi projects and different interest rates many times a day, and in the real world, like it's literally impossible. That's really cool. I think what's missing in the DeFi world is like what is backing it at the end of the day, is that like we have all these things in the real world that are like whether they're securities or other things that are like kind of like backing the derivative asset that gets created, and a lot of times that's the US dollar. What are those things now? And that's why we're seeing like all these like weird tokens and people trying to figure that out, but they're also a lot of what's backing it is hype, and that's kind of like a replay of 2017-18. But like the Filecoin and these other projects, it's really, really hard to build this stuff. It takes years and years to get this stuff right. I mean, we're talking about millions of users that need to do this stuff, and they can't.
Yeah, so you're speaking about DeFi and kind of like what's really backing, what's underlining. Obviously, a lot of these projects are over collateralized, but they're over collateralized with still a crypto, with Ethereum, and because of the price volatility of this, it does really put the whole system on shaky grounds. We look back at Black Thursday, back in March, and you kind of see how fragile this all is. And I think that's the biggest difference between the ICO boom and DeFi and the traditional markets. When you're looking at the traditional markets, there's equity involved. You're actually owning something. So even if the speculation doesn't work out, at the end of the day, you still own something. You still own the part of the corporation or the assets or whatever it may be. And with DeFi, we're still kind of missing that. I think that will slowly come in. But when we're talking about the ad space, is there underlying value there? I mean, the value being the I guess the action, the CPA, the action that the user does, whether you buy the advertisement, things like that. Do you find that the ad space is better suited or doesn't really have this issue of lacking an underlying value or asset?
Well, I think that the transaction of attention, it is, kind of what BAT is doing and others are doing, or the business transaction of measurement, it is the asset. And if you can look at tokens as similar to like what a share would be, is that there's rights associated to a token, and those rights represent that equity or that share of margin, or whatever it is. And what people are purchasing is essentially a set of rights. And whether I am using the utility of the network for myself, or I'm kind of like I'm purchasing that utility and lending it out. I get basically paid for that utility in that sense there, because I believe that those rights are valuable. So
yeah. And I think that, but then it comes in that clash that a lot of projects and people have faced when it comes to cryptocurrencies, is this, hey, if it is a real asset, if there is real value, then it starts entering security territory. And so it's kind of this fine line where you want there to be real assets, you want it to have value, you want it to act like a security because that is a valuable thing. But on the other hand, then it becomes really hamstrung. Innovation really becomes tangled up with having to file and register, and and once it's a security, it's a whole nother aspect, and you have to be an accredited investor, which is really dumb that it goes by the amount of money you have. I mean, then it just falls into the old kind of broken system or old school system that a lot of people are trying to get away from. So do you see a future in the crypto space where there are crypto securities and just crypto utility, or will it kind of be this morphed gray area ball that we've been living up until now?
I think it's going to be the gray area in the sense that it's just not legislated yet. It's not really understood yet, and that I'm starting to see a couple of things. I think they just like raise the amount of money that people can raise without investors, and also I think they raise the amount that like a normal non-accredited person can like own. But there's still, they're like to basically directly tie like the like revenue or everything else to this like set of rights. It literally is a hybrid. It's like the utility of it powers it, and in return you have those like rights. And there's just like a new thing that now you can do with crypto assets. I like there are a lot of people working on that problem from like at least the United States, from a legislation point of view. We go about it that there's that just kind of have faith that the people that are focused on that will kind of just keep doing that. I mean, there's just so much work to be done to get it to where the vision is that we all share, and there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be like Bitcoin price. It's going to be a lot of up and down till we get price discovery.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, as much as whether you like or hate regulators, they do not have an easy job when it comes to regulating a technology that literally moves so fast and innovates so quickly, and getting their minds around it. But last question before I let you go, because I do know that you're very busy. When we're, as a crypto enthusiast, let's say, as someone who's interested in the space, there's been one big innovation or roadmap that I think a lot of people have been following, and that's Ethereum shift from proof of work to proof of stake, from ETH 1.0 to 2.0. And as you're an investor or a crypto holder, it's interesting. I hope will it go up, will it go down, what will next year bring? But I don't have too much skin in the game, so I wanted to know your feelings. As someone who's built a project on Ethereum, essentially, that its success really is kind of tied in, and you're depending on this infrastructure. With the launch of the ETH 2.0 beacon chain that just launched, I believe it was this morning or last night. How do you feel? Is it really nerve-wracking? Oh, what if they mess this up? Do you believe that, hey, they're going to keep ETH 1.0, all the assets of that, because they don't want to mess it up? I mean, what are your feelings as someone who's much more than just an observer, but as a participant who's really tied and reliant on it? What are your feelings on this transition?
Yeah, really good question. So multifaceted, right? So everything, the way we look at it is like, hey, like let's just have a hedge for a lot of stuff, right? So the way that we built MadNetwork is that we chose Ethereum. We would really love to be on the Bitcoin network, and we could be, but it would have required a lot more development and taken probably another year or so to like build the interface to do that properly. But that is still an option. So like if ETH2 is a big fail, and I don't think it will be, but if it is, that we we can still survive, and we're separate. We use Ethereum for security. The ETH2 we're really looking forward to because it will be more consistent and fast, cheaper, and will allow our network to basically do more things. But I think, as you said, I think ETH and ETH2 are going to be alive for quite some time. I think people generally underestimate how hard this stuff is, especially at this like global scale, and like and that it's slow rollouts are a really good thing.
Well, yeah. Listen, if there's one thing you can't fault Ethereum for, is rushing this thing. They are taking it slow. They're taking the time, and you can't blame them. They have billions of dollars of assets locked in on their network, so it makes sense. Take it easy, take it slow. But luckily, the projects that are being built on, like yours, are innovating very quickly, and that's fun and great for all of us users, and helpful for blockchain adoption as well. So, Adam, I appreciate you taking the time and all the development and work you guys are doing to help make this dream a reality. So thanks so much for taking the time and speaking to us and helping us see a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes that we might not have known. So thank you very much. And for all of our viewers here at Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.